and equally, my mum. But also, yeah, some very, very close, special male friends of mine that I hold dear to my heart who have also exponentially changed my life and now see myself a different way. So that point leads me on to the next person, and that is my friend Sarah, who has played a similar role to Emma, but in an incredibly different way. And actually, some of the greatest relationships, some of the greatest loves, exposures of my life and what my life is now has come because she has been the catalyst of those things. And so she came into my life, I want to say 2016, so about 8 years ago or so. We both met at a conference. She was speaking at a conference, a bit like how I felt like you and I had a synergy. I just saw her on the stage and thought, this girl is speaking my language. And I'm a bit of a connector. Like when I see people I resonate with, I magnetize myself towards them and I bring them in. And before you know it, you're part of my life. You're sleeping in my house, having drinks of wine with me, going off on holiday with me, and you can't shake me off. And that's kind of what happens with Sarah. Sarah and I collaborated. We created some business together, and it was very, very clear that we were so in synergy from that perspective. So we have a professional relationship in that respect. But Sarah goes so much more deeper than that for me. While I'm doing with Rachel the rebelliousness, I'm doing with Emma the drive, you can achieve anything. So come on, nothing's impossible. I kind of stepped into this hyper powered, like businesswoman, Maria Montessori in the back of my head, where these three women all challenging power, 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 be a freaking queen, go out there, shit, right? All of that channeling through me. Sarah did the opposite. Sarah was like, who are you when you're quiet?
Yeah.
Who are you when you're breaking? Who are you when your soul wants to speak to you? And she has, it makes me feel quite tearful now. She has the most beautiful, calming energy about her. And she enabled me to find a part of myself that I never knew existed. I'd only known myself to be the fighter through my childhood. And then furthermore, the rebel and the driver, right? Get things done. Over the past 8 years of knowing Sarah, she has enabled me to step into the soulful me, the spiritual me, the softer me, the introverted me, the more cautious me, the heartbroken me. And she honors and loves every single aspect of me from that perspective. And I thought I could only be successful if I showed up in the ways that Rachel and Emma and Maria had taught me, right? That's what I thought my identity was. And she has shown me that I am just as lovable, if not more lovable, for my weaker points, my softer side, my more soulful, my more spiritual side. She's enabled me to meet people through her contacts and through events that she invited me to that have also exponentially changed my life and have become incredibly important, which are the men that I alluded to before in my life. I would not have met them and they wouldn't have shaped my life in the way that they have if Sarah hadn't opened those doors. And actually, again, I think it's the softer parts of me that they love and appreciate and want in their life. I honestly never knew that I could speak to my soul in this way. I could communicate with myself in this way. And I didn't have to be the Sophie who's got the podcast and the TED Talk and the book and look at what she's created and look at the Louis Vuitton handbag and the Audi on the driveway. I thought I had to be all of those things to be loved and recognised and be successful. She makes me feel like I can sit in a lake covered in leaves and mud with nothing on, completely naked, and still be the energy and the passion and the drive that I am in the world without having to be all of this stuff that I enjoy doing, but I don't need to be loved. And so Yeah, she, much like Mila with the unconditional love, Sarah has shown me a route to some self-acceptance and a huge uncovering of my personality that I never knew existed.
Well, honestly, what I'm hearing is that she's sort of connecting all the parts for you and giving you, um, if you like, permission to drop all those sort of layers, those
Mm,
protective layers. And I can relate completely. You and I are quite similar in our childhoods, different circumstances, but coming out of a childhood like that for both of us was, our self worth was very much built built by ourselves.
mhm. Oh, yeah.
We
Yeah,
created our
definitely.
self-worth through self-action.
Mm,
And that's a hard habit to break, as the song goes.
mm,
It's like you just get almost addicted to it. Like,
mm,
and you have to keep that energy up all the time and be relevant and do all the things that you think are going to get you accepted and loved. But as the great Brené Brown said several times in her
mhm,
career, it's the softer sides of us that, if we can tap into and bring them out to the world, are the most attractive things about us. It's
mm.
that strength in vulnerability, isn't it? It
Yes.
says, "Here's all my soft underbelly. Give it a tickle or give it a kick. It doesn't matter to me.
Mm,
I'm all right. I'm gonna be fine."
mm.
And I think that's a hugely attractive. And if not Emma, sorry, Sarah has kind of taken all of those aspects of you and said, yeah, let's celebrate them. I-
Number 4 is very interesting. So this is a chap called Nick who I dated, who was my fiercest mirror. He openly shares this, so I'm sure I can say this about him. You won't mind. He's a recovering alcoholic of almost 30 years, and very charismatic. Can suck anybody in, and equally just say, "See you later." So I remember saying to him when I was seeing him, "You're 50% the ideal man, and 50% I just want to tell you to get out of my life." Actually, those are the polite words I used. And and because there was a lot of love bombing. So he saw parts of me I didn't see myself. So this is the value in someone seeing you and feeling you and acknowledging you. He did that in many, many ways. But when I started to grow as a person, it became a threat. And so then he decided to dismiss that. So it's a very split personality, but he's also very aware of the person that he is. So he doesn't try and hide it. He's like,
yeah,
this is who I am, right? You
yeah,
fit or you don't." And he showed me a lot of things around what I thought I was and what I actually was. And this goes back to where we started at the beginning. I thought I was being caring and
yeah,
loving and I've got everything sorted. And he was like, "Well, I don't want you to do that. What are you doing that for?"
yeah,
And so there was this thing around, am I giving people actually what they want, or am I doing it to make myself feel better?
yeah,
And the whole bossy thing was I would suggest something and then organize everything without consultation of anybody. "I've got this. I've done it all. You just show up, it's all done."
oh
And they'd
God,
be like, "Well, I'm not really sure I wanted to do that." And actually I wanted to participate. And I had never considered that people would want to join me in a collaboration rather than taking out space. I just thought I had to do it because I'd never had anyone help me, right?
yeah,
So he was very good at showing up the mirrors, and he said, "You've also got a lot of pride."
hmm.
And I was like, "What do you mean? Like, what do you think very highly of yourself?" And I was like, "Well, no one else is doing it. I think I need to do it for myself." And then he would often show how that would come across as the know-it-all. So rather always offering advice, offering a
Yeah, yeah,
suggestion, rather than sitting back and listening. So who I thought I was changed radically when I met him, because he was like, "You're not actually who you think you are. You do realize that, don't you?" And part of that was constructive and part of that was dismissive. And my job was to recognize what it was, which part of the coin that was. But I had some very challenging times with him. But now I give thanks to someone who was that fierce mirror, because actually I needed calling out.
yeah.
And I don't know if you know do you know Mel Robbins?
Yes, I the
Yeah,
podcast, yeah.
yeah. So Mel Robbins, I read her books many years ago, and something I learned from her is to say it as it is.
Mm.
And so he said it as it was. And I say that with my clients when they're like, well, this has happened and that's happened. And, I'm like this because of that. And I go, so what? So what? Everyone's got trauma. Let's talk about how we can help you to take ownership of
Mm.
what you'd like to happen. Let's move you forward.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I'm known for my directness. And that came from there. It was like, sometimes you have to call people out. I had a client on Saturday and she said, I have this thing called 4 levels of consciousness, and it basically shows you where you're operating from, whether you're the victim, whether you believe you're the driver of that energy and you have to do everything, whether you believe you can co-create, manifest with energy or not, and whether you believe everything is already yours. And I said to her, so you did the quiz, where were you? And she said, well, I was one off, I'm almost at the collaboration space. And I said, well, let's not fluff it up. Let's be honest. You're at the stage where you believe you need to do it all. And she said, yeah, but I don't want to admit it.
Mm.
And I said, so what does that bring up? And it was like failure, or maybe I'm not doing my best. And I said, it's actually really fine, but we can't lie to ourselves. So he taught me not to lie to myself. And he also brought up the things he really noticed about me that were positive and the things that actually I was delusional about for myself.
Isn't that fascinating? Honestly, well, first of all, I can't work out yet because I'm still reeling. Whether I should love Nick or punch him in the face. But I think, and I imagine on the receiving end of his directness, it was a challenge to know which one. I don't advocate punching people, by the way. I'm just saying it's a metaphor.
That's how you feel sometimes, isn't
But
it?
yeah, and it's like, because that confrontingness, someone actually holding a mirror up to you and making you confront yourself. Oh my gosh, we everybody does it.
Yeah.
Everybody will do anything to protect themselves from actually having to look in the mirror, and myself included. And I'm pretty good at
Yeah.
holding my own gaze and going, really?
Yeah.
Why did you think that? Why did you do that? Really? Push myself to a place of honesty. And those examples you gave, if I go back to the holiday again, like my daughter, who's my greatest mirror, she says to me, you didn't even ask me what I wanted out this holiday. You went and just
Interesting.
booked it. You thought a family holiday should look like this, and you just went and booked it. And then you said, I've done it. This is what we're doing. This is where we're going. And of course, I feel a sense of pride because I'm like, look at me. I'm so capable. I can book holidays, and I get the right flights, and I'm a woman of the world. I know what I'm doing. But of course, she's like, I don't even want to go there. And I'm like, oh. And I had to admit to myself that she was right. It was like, I should have slowed down
Yeah.
and taken the trouble to ask people what they actually wanted. So I'm with you on that. And I think if Nick and I ever met, he'd probably be quite harsh on me.
He's very interesting because he's very interested. He'll sit and listen and ask
and he'll
you
get friends to
questions,
you.
and then he'll slightly love bomb you, even in a friendship way. You're like, wow, I really feel seen by this person.
Number 3 is my teacher, Miss Brewis, my English teacher at Caterham School. She taught me English A level. She actually taught English GCSE and A level. And Miss Brewis' passion for literature was so fundamental for the actor I am now. I think she's the one that made me, without question, there's no think. Miss Brewis made me fall in love with Shakespeare. I remember we were studying Antony and Cleopatra for A level, and I just remember her just having us push the desks back and stand up and read out loud this play. And then sometimes she would read it and just pause in the middle of it. And that wasn't for everyone. Not everyone felt that, but I know that connection happened. And I feel that when I came round to acting and Shakespeare was sort of thrust upon me, as they say, I was so confident with it because I knew what to look for. I knew the humanity of Shakespeare. I knew the excitement of language without having studied iambic pentameter properly. I think we talked about iambic pentameter. How could you study Shakespeare and not do it? But I knew the idea. I think she helped me with the idea of imagery, because I remember the papers I wrote. I remember just getting like 96% or 100% in some mock exams and stuff like that, and acing, because I got it. I wasn't afraid to be theatrical in my writing. I remember that. And so I wasn't afraid to use drama while writing a serious paper, because there was no way you could approach this material and not do it that way,
Yeah.
So I felt she really, and I beyond Shakespeare, but I would say Shakespeare because if you looked at my resume, you see my work, to this day, Shakespeare still remains the dominant factor in all my work put together, And so I can say that was the beginning of me being an actor, not just someone who loved watching actors or seeing what they did, but actually starting the journey before I knew I was starting the journey was with Miss Brewis. And I remember after doing my A-level exams, just a long chat with her, and I told her what the questions was and how I answered it, and she was like, brilliant. And I knew I'd aced it because she got it. And I just remember thinking that whenever in the past I've done shows and we've toured, and part of it has been about going into schools, and I've had her on my shoulder. Let's make this relevant to you. Let's get it exciting. Not just the fact that your curriculum only needs you to read Act 1 for your curriculum. Let's talk about the whole piece. Let's perform it. And then years later, and I attribute this to Miss Brewis, I remember I was doing a tour of Romeo and Juliet. I was playing Romeo, and our stop was Notre Dame, the university. And I went in to do one of those classes, and I wanted to do a scene from Romeo and Juliet. And I said, okay, who wants to read this out loud? And some people put up their hands, something. But there was this really quiet girl, really, you could tell, meek. There was no question. And she sort of put her, I said, okay, you. And there was this guy, this was about 2003. So that was an early stage to have laptops to take notes, but he was one of those. Actually, and he put I said, you. And the class, I remember the reaction from the class just going, oh, God, these two.
Why these
Why
two?
these two? And we got to work it, and we explained it in the way I feel Ms. Brewis explained scenes to me. And I explained it to them. I said, this is what's at stake here. You've risked your life, Romeo, this is what's at. And these two did this scene so beautifully. And the girl just and the class applauded and whooped and went nuts. It was something out of a Disney high school movie.
Yeah.
They went nuts for these two. And I saw how much it meant to them. And I was leaving the class, and the teacher chased me down the hall, half in tears. And she says, I've been trying to get her to open up for a semester and a half.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. And I take that back to Miss Brewis, because I think she awakened something in me and whoever was ready to listen. And whenever I teach, which I don't like doing often because I have a weird relationship with the idea of teaching acting, but I always try and do for them what I feel she did for me. So she structured my life in that way.
And so it goes. That's the whole pay forward thing, isn't it? It's like
Absolutely.
She influenced you in that way and gave you that confidence, but also the delight in it. Because it can be dry. I mean, my school days, I'm not going to say I grasped it particularly. I think I wrestled with it mostly, to be fair.
Yeah.
But it did come to life when I did go to the theatre and see it performed. And I think that's where Shakespeare comes alive.
Number 5, I think, would probably be one of my first managers in my field, a guy called Len Charles, who taught me how to be a leader and also how to. Number one, he believed in me. He appointed me as a manager when I had very little experience, knowledge, or skill. So thanks, Len. He took a chance on an unproven kid. But number 2, he taught me how to lead and also how to face the most challenging human situations. I remember, and the biggest thing he taught me was, and I started working in homeless hostels at a time when my mental health was very, very poor. Like I was in such a state, I was so anxious, I could barely function, and I was very defended against all the ways that I was not coping, didn't want to hear it, didn't want to pretend I was okay. And but that job, I had so many. And he appointed me, and I was sort of manager of all the support services of this enormous homeless hostel. It was like 188 beds or something. It was like really big. There was a homeless hostel, there was a mental health project, there was it was a lot. And it was a really scary environment. I found it a really scary environment. I remember when I came in on the first day and I heard this banging and crashing and shouting and smashing. And I wanted to hide under the desk. And then I looked, and then someone said, "Oh, and they named the person. And I looked at the board and I was like, that's my bloody client. I've got to go out and, oh my God. So I just went out, but it was, do you know what? It was, and when I went out, I was so scared. It was unreal. Coming from, my extremely privileged, protected background, I had no idea. I was terrified. Anyway, the person that I spoke to was actually the most wonderful man who I remember with so much love now. And of course, actually what I learned immediately was he was extremely distressed and for really bloody good reason. And so it taught me, and what that job taught me and Len taught me was I had so many nights where I went to bed scared for the next morning. Like I remember there was a time that a guy set the place on fire and then started trying to smash his way through into the staff office. And the police wouldn't come because I think the police were a bit kind of nervous of the place. So they never used to come. And he started smashing his way into the office. And my staff member turned to me and said, "What are we going to do when he gets through the door?" And I said, I was the manager. And I was like, I guess we'll run. Anyway, but there were so many nights that, there was so many nights that I would go to bed and I'd think, I have no idea how to handle this situation. You could never predict what was happening. I remember coming into work one Monday and the facilities manager had sent me 17 photographs of some human excrement in a little carrier bag that someone had been throwing out their window. You could never predict it. And it was wonderful.
Oh my goodness.
It was really good for the brain and very good for someone who was gripped by anxiety, because I just learned that the best, and as a psychotherapist, you now know the best trick for anxiety is you've got to face the anxiety. You've got to come in and face the damn music. And every time you do that, you get stronger. And Len taught me to do that. I watched him, like every time something kicked off, he bounced up the stairs and he'd be like, "Felicity, you've got to show people that you're not scared, because if you're scared, this place becomes an absolute like bear pit." So he taught me that, if something's kicking off in the hostel, as the manager, you are the first one in the room. I watched him leap across the reception desk, scissor kick across the reception desk and break up a fight between two like enormous men in my first week. And that's what taught me, and now I do it as an absolute reflex. If something is difficult, you walk straight into the fire, every time, straight into the fire. And Len, he is a beautiful, wise, brilliant person. And I will never stop thanking him for what he taught me about management leadership, about working in like scary environments, which were actually, beautiful environments as well, as I learned to, but also in terms of how as a human being to face the things that frighten me. So I think, Len's got to be there.
Gosh, he's given you so much, hasn't he? Well, first of all, how old would you have been at this time?
I was in my early 20s.
Gosh.
I was about 23, 24, 25, those years.
I mean, and that's a lot to take on. But I can totally picture you leaning into his strength, his confidence, his sort of conviction about what it ought to look like. And I think when you've got someone like that showing you the way, it's a little bit copy it until you can just take it on board, isn't it?
And he
so I think
always showed like absolute respect as well. And that he taught me, as did so many other, I mentioned a guy called Alistair Dinsmore, who I have lost touch with, but would love to thank. I remember when he would show me, because we would have to have these really scary sometimes conversations. If something had kicked off, really, if something had kicked off, then we would have to call that person down and have a conversation. And you did not know where that conversation was going to land up, but you showed no fear. And and actually what he showed me was that he would go into every conversation, and every single time the people that were supporting were beautiful, extraordinary human beings. And not, don't let fear and prejudice rule about, he absolutely taught me that. But he would start every conversation, the most difficult conversation, by leaning forward and saying to the person, first of all, I really want to let you know you're a very well respected resident of this place. You're very well respected. You're very important in this community. And in doing so, the person would
Calmed.
settle, of course. And they were
Yeah.
important. And my silly fear was not, not right. Like some white fragility, some class fragility, and so, yeah, he modeled, you bring respect, you start from love and respect. And no matter how many things were kicking off, no matter how heightened we were, he would come with, I've got all the time in the world for you, and you are the most well-respected person in this room. Let's get going. And for that, I thank him so much. Yeah, beautiful.
And number 3 are like, I think we'll start my friends in general. People like family that you choose. That's the definition of my friends, especially one of them, Sylvia. She lives in Mexico from a few years ago. And my friends started making a lot of jokes because they said like Jose, my husband, is like it's kind of Sylvia, but in a different way, but in the exact way. Well, we've been best friends since we are 5 years old. We've been sharing our lives, and Jose is this person that's see life's really simple, pragmatic, organized, structured. He has a system for everything, and it really it works. Life is easy and moves with it. With Sylvie, we go deeper. We get into the complexity of things.
Yeah.
And she has this superpower of not just understanding, but even enjoying complexity of human beings and understanding. And what if, and is this place in which you can explore every single part of you, of your story, of people around you. It's like going into all dimension. And it's exploring myself without judgments.
Yeah. Plus, also, if she's known you pretty much your whole life. I mean, first 5 years, you wouldn't have been worth knowing. Not a lot of chat. So 5 years plus, that's pretty much your whole life, isn't it? And to have somebody who knows you and doesn't have to fill in any gaps. I mean, I'm very fixated on friendship at the moment. I'm fascinated by it actually, because I think it's the one relationship that has no rules and regulations about it. Going back to unconditional love in a family. I mean, let's just explore that for a minute. In a family, there's unconditional love, as in it's an unbreakable bond. But it isn't unconditional from a behavioral set. I mean, there's still expectations around hierarchy, respect, communication, responsibility. There's a whole bunch of unspoken things like aunties and uncles, and that everyone has their place and everyone understands what their role is to play, right? And we kind of know the rules. In friendship, it's so wide open. A friend can be any age, size, shape, type, person, anything. And the rules of friendship are so personal and so boundaryless. And yet friendship is such a fundamental like they say, people who live a long life have a lot of friends. And having a social life is super important. And feeling connected to people who aren't your family or your co-workers or your romantic relationships is super enriching for you. So, and again, back to my point, there's 8 billion of us passing each other every moment. How can we make a friend? How does anybody make one? You know, I'm making new friends now in my mid-50s, and I'm loving it. I love it. I just find people, I'm not shy about that. I want to be people's friends. I think, I might even say it. Can we be friends?
Come on, be friends.
Come on, let's just be friends. But I think there's a lot of shyness around it. I think people don't know how to make friends sometimes, and I wonder if there should be books about it. Should be, you know what I
Make
mean?
friends,
How to make friends.
definitely. And how to understand friendship, I think definitely like the self emerge in this genius friendship. And yes, sometimes we picture friendship like this, uh, this long relation. Uh, but I'm also feel really grateful for maybe the short friendships that I had in
Yeah.
a few moments of my life. Like that was exactly what I needed to. We just our roads get connected, deeply intersected, and we move
Yeah.
forward, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely is the way you choose, because in family you're really grateful, but of course you're born in that situation.
Yeah. And it's
That's
for
your
life.
family. Exactly. You will, of course, there are different type of families, different type of relations, but no matter what happened, you will always be he will he will always be my brother. That's it.
Yeah.
That's something that you're not able to change. In friendship, you decide.
Mm.
You have that option of being there. So of course it changed the perspective of
But
things.
remember, they have a choice as well. So actually, if you have a friend that you've had since 5, every single time, every part of your life, she had a choice too. Sylvia could have said, "I don't like her anymore. I don't want to be her friend."
Yeah.
And that is a risk that you don't carry so much with marriage and co-workers and family because there's a social structure there that keeps you have to give notice at a job, you have to get divorced as a wife, and to leave your family is a pretty near enough impossible thing. But the fact that it is so
That's true.
optional and yet it still endures, that tells me that what you have with Sylvia must be pretty special.